So hello and welcome back to Go Again Gaming and to another Blitz game here on the channel. A refreshing way to play Flesh and Blood, as I've discovered recently. And today we have Bravo being piloted by Andrew against Rob, who's playing Dromai. Andrew's got an interesting Bravo list. He's been playing like this life gain Bravo for the longest time that I've known him, probably a couple of years now at this point. And Rob just loving his Dromai deck. Unfortunately for him, Dromai has living legended recently, but still playable in Blitz. So here we are. And Blitz, obviously, as we know, is a very, very fast format, but I imagine the gameplay between these two heroes could be a little bit more accentuated. And we've got Rob starting off by cracking the gold token. Obviously, he's got that from Crown of Dominion. Pitching 2 reds to get 2 ash, and then obviously drawing a card in the process. So a good way to start off Rob's ash economy, and he's going to continue that by raking the embers here. So he's going to get an additional ash plus another ash from the actual Rake the Embers effect, and then he's going to transform up to 3 of those ashes into Aether Ash Wings. So with an ash still remaining as well, that's a pretty good starting turn, especially against Bravo, who likes to and can block fairly effectively. The little Kodachi dragons, as such, are very, very annoying for Andrew and Bravo and Guardian in general. So a great start from Rob, and obviously he's just going to be arsening and passing, and now it's over to Andrew to start this off on the real first turn of the game, although that is a real first turn of the game from Dromai's side. But Andrew here, as you can see, dictating his hand size by a dice. And speaking of life gain, as we did earlier, we see a Blessing of Deliverance yellow being played here, pitching a last-ditch effort with 1 floating. Yeah, we've got Blessing of Deliverance coming out. And an important thing to note here is that Andrew did not draw a card from the Blessing of Deliverance because of the fact that Blessing of Deliverance needs to check the pitch zone before you actually pitch to see if the effect actually goes off when it enters. If you have a card in your pitch zone already with cost 3 or greater, that's when you draw a card, but not so much on this turn. But Andrew is going to be able to follow this up with a Tear Asunder, pitching yet another blue, and then going down to 1 card in hand, using the 1 resource to activate his Tectonic Plating to get a Seismic Surge, and then he's going to come in with an Anothos for 7, I believe, because it's get +1 from the Tear Asunder, and it can see a couple of cards in there with cost 3 or greater. So that's coming in for 7 Dominate on hit, discard 2. That's pretty good. And yeah, it could see a couple of blocks from Rob early on, and rightly so. A Fateful Scene from the Arsenal is going to cover up 4 of that, so it's a good job Rob did Arsenal that D-React, and then he must have another reaction or something in hand. Yep, that's right, he's got a Sink Below, so he's going to be able to cover up all 8 of that damage and not discard any cards or take any damage there. The good thing to note as well is if Rob takes any damage whatsoever, his Wave of Reality will crack and be replaced by a Spectral Shield. So he does have a little bit of block there on his arms as well, if he does take any damage. But Andrew establishing his favourite card, Blessing, and a Seismic Surge. Over to Rob now, just throwing out a Ravenous Rabble. This is one of those cards that just basically translates into free damage in a lot of decks, right? Ravenous Rabble is always going to be a 0 for 4 with Go Again, and it's just one of those cards that you don't really want to commit blocking. Similar to how it works in Azalea as well. It's mainly a 0 for 4, 0 for 3 sometimes with Go Again, which you don't really want to commit any cards to blocking. And Ravenous Rabble, a great card in Dromai as well, because it starts the chain with a red card, which means it turns on all of your dragons after that. So yeah, obviously a lot of the red 0 cost cards. As we can see here, Andrew is just taking that 4 to the face. He does have a Blessing of Deliverance established, so he is within his right mind to believe that he is going to gain 2 life next turn. So maybe the damage doesn't really matter that much. But Rob, we see here, pitching to the Flamescale Furnace, creating an Ash, and just arsenaling a card here. Probably just for the sake of getting that out of his hand, filtering it out a little bit. But Andrew's going to start his turn with a Seismic Surge, which is going to make his next Guardian attack cost 1 less. And he's revealing 2 3-cost cards there off of the Blessing of Deliverance, so he's going to gain 2 life, which is pretty good. So that Ravenous Rabble only really attacked him for 2. Yeah, Blessing just putting in a little bit of extra work here, one of Andrew's favourite cards. And it always has been. Obviously, as you can see there, the Blessing of Deliverance all the way back from Welcome to Wraith. Very, very original Guardian aura. But Andrew's going to be activating Bravo's ability here to give something dominate. He's going to be pitching a blue unmovable to do that with 1 floating. The next Guardian attack is going to cost 1 less as well, so it's going to be costing not much. Starstruck coming in for 10. That's a large number. And this is dominated as well because of Bravo's ability. So Dromai staring down a Starstruck is pretty nasty. It does have dominate as well, so obviously Dromai can only block with 1 card from hand, plus a card from Arsenal, plus the Wave of Reality or any other equipment blocks. Rob might want to sort of commit to it. But yeah, I imagine we're going to see that Wave of Reality go this turn. With a 10 dominated attack, which basically shuts down opponents' turns if the crush effect triggers. Most of the time, that crush effect is just debilitating your entire turn. And we can see here Rob gesturing to the Wave of Reality. That's going to pop to prevent 1 damage and replace itself with a Spectral Shield. So effectively, this card actually blocks for 2 most of the time, which is pretty good. And then he's taking the rest of the damage. He's taking 9 damage to the face here. Wow, that is a lot of damage. So he's not going to be able to attack with pretty much anything next turn because the crush effect is active. They've been dealt 9 damage, so they're only able to attack or activate cards with 9 or more power. With greater than the damage dealt this way, actually, so it would be 10, I believe, that he can only play a 10 attack next turn. But doesn't look like he's going to be doing that. So he's pitching some cards here to play and establish an Uvia. So that's pretty good. Obviously, he's going to create some Ash off of the back of that, and then get a Ash Wing as well. But yeah, that's pretty much all Rob can really do. It looks like he's signalling to attack with his Ash Wing, but he's not going to be able to. He's going to have to take that back. Yeah, there we go. He is having to take that back. Starstruck taking no prisoners with what it allows you to do. So he's going to establish a Passing Mirage instead, which is one of those cards, one of those spectral cards evolved that do accrue a lot of value over time, so that's going to be quite good. But over to Andrew, his Seismic Surge is going to pop, so his next Guardian attack action card is going to cost 1 less to play. So that's always a good start. Just that extra 1 can really just sort out a few hands and allow you to establish an arsenal sometimes. We know that, Crippling Crush costs 7 to play? So that can be done off 2 blues now instead of a blue and a Tunic or a blue and something else. Obviously, Andrew doesn't have Tunic in this matchup, but yeah, it allows you to really sort of reduce the cost of your Guardian attacks, and that can really help with depending on what your hand composition is like. But yeah, Andrew's still just deciding what he wants to throw at Dromai here. Significant life lead, but life leads are very, very irrelevant sometimes when you consider the board state that is also at stake here. But this could be a bit of a setup turn from Andrew here, playing the Imposing Visage. So he's pitching 6 for this, so he's pitching 2 blues. Probably going to go search for a Blessing of Deliverance. There it is, the red one. Obviously, he's going to have 1 floating after this. The Blessing of Deliverance as well, more importantly, is actually going to see those cards in his pitch zone now, because obviously he's played the Imposing, already pitched for it, then the Imposing brings in the Blessing, which sees the 2/3 costs in his graveyard, and as a result of that, he's going to be able to now reveal the top 3 cards of his deck, and then gain 1 life for each card with costs 3 or greater revealed this way. So that is pretty good. So that's probably going to gain him some life back as well. And he's just using the Tectonic Plating here to gain that Seismic Surge back. But yeah, it's all Andrew at the moment with regards to the swinging going on here. He's going to be throwing that Anothos at Uvia. So throwing his having a big setup turn, throwing the hammer at the most important dragon on the field there, and establishing an arsenal with a Seismic Surge and a Blessing of Deliverance next turn is going to be good. Now, I misspoke earlier when the Blessing came in. The Blessing will crack at the start of his next turn and gain in the life there, but he did draw a card when it entered because of the pitch in his obviously the pitch in his pitch zone. But over to Rob, who's going to establish yet another Uvia, another one. So he's pitched 2 reds to do that. So obviously he's going to get some Ash and then generate an Ash Wing as well off of Uvia's effect. And then he's going to establish an Asvalai as well. That's pretty massive. So he's now attacking with the Asvalai. So Asvalai is obviously one of those dragons that can do split damage effects. So it's going to ping Andrew for 1 and then attack him for 2 afterwards. So Andrew has to decide whether he's going to AB or Arcane Barrier this. And he does have the Null Rune Boots on field, although I don't know whether those Null Rune Boots will even be used in this game. So I think Andrew just wants to go over the top as quickly as possible, dominate and interact, and just go over the top as quickly as possible here. So those Null Rune Boots, that Null Rune Boot slot could actually be wasted in this matchup. But we will see. We will see. He's still got the Arcanite Skullcap as well, which he can pitch to. But yeah, I don't think Andrew really wants to pitch to just 1 instance of arcane damage. And no, he doesn't. He's taking 1 off of that straight away. And now the 2 is coming in as well. Now, Andrew is probably bearing in mind here as well that his Blessing will pop next turn and probably give him 3 life back. But he is deciding to block with the Creative Fist on this Asvalai. And Rob is going to follow up with a Ashwing for 1, which he's going to take. And now another Ashwing for 1. And Rob's just deciding to shortcut it. It's going to be 4 instances of 1 Andrew. What do you want to do about it? Is basically what he's saying. And it looks like Andrew is taking it all to the face, going down to 12. But under the sort of impression that he's probably going to gain 3 life back from his Blessing. He's played the deck enough times. But first of all, we're going to see a Seismic pop. So next Guardian attack action is going to cost 1 less, which is very, very good. He's got an arsenal established. And the Blessing of Deliverance is going to trigger here. So he's going to reveal a Crippling Crush, a Unmovable Blue, and a Last Ditch Effort, all of which cost 3 or more. So he's going to gain 3 life back, which is pretty good. And now he's got a very, very good understanding of what his next turn is going to be as well. Throwing out a Crippling Crush, 2 blues available. So he knows that he can at least do that next turn as well if he can use all of his hand here. So that information is also crucial to how Andrew plays the next turn as well. But this one is going to be a Tear Asunder. That leaves him with 3 cards in hand. And he's just going to throw a Starstruck at him again. This is a dominated Starstruck this time. Wow. Okay. All right. I think the last one was dominated as well, right? He activated Bravo and then did it. But this time it's coming in for 11, I believe. Tear Asunder gives +1, doesn't it, on the next Guardian attack? So yeah, coming in for 11 with Dominate now. That is pretty nasty. And Rob choosing to block with a Nourishing from hand. So that's for 3, and then the Flame Scale for 2. So that's 5. Still 6 to cover up here. That's 9 covered up there from the Sink Below. So it's coming through for 11. And then the Spectral Shield's going to soak up another one. So he's going to take 1 off of this and go down to 10. Now, unfortunately for Rob, that does still trigger the Tear Asunder. The Starstruck Crush effect doesn't really matter, but he is still going to have to discard 2 cards with the Tear Asunder trigger as well, which is pretty nasty. Discarding a Tome and a Blaze Headlong. So there's a couple of good cards. Just 0 for 4 vanilla damage, go again, and then a Tome. Pretty good stuff to see gone in the bin. And Andrew knows exactly what he's drawing into next turn. He's going to be drawing into a Crippling Crush and 2 blues at the very least. So at least he can chuck back a Crippling Crush this next turn as well if he doesn't block anything, with cards from hand at least. But Rob, again, not in a bad position. All those cards on field now. All he has to do is play out a red, which he does do, but this one does not have Go Again, the Dust from the Chrome Caverns. So a bit of a setup from Rob here again to establish if he brings out a Dromai late game, that's not going to have Phantasm anymore. That could be very good. But we can see Bravo here actually getting the resources he needs. The Showtime was the card we didn't know about. He's going to be playing a Dominated Crippling Crush, pitching in. That really lined up well for him because, as we know, he had the Unmovable and the Last Ditch Effort coming from the Blessing of Deliverance, but we needed an extra blue to be able to activate Bravo and throw it for Dominate, and that's exactly what we found here in the blue Showtime. So that worked out very, very nicely for Andrew, throwing a Dominated Crippling for 11. Rob chooses to Fateful Scene from hand, which is going to block 4 of it and leak 7 damage if he can't do anything else. Yep, so wow, going down to 3 and having to discard 2 cards at random. Bravo is just Rick rolling over the top of Dromai here, just saying, right, I don't care about your allies, I'm just going to attack you straight to the face. And Andrew having the right idea, because I think as a Guardian you do have to just go over the top of this wall of dragons, as we can see here. But yeah, that's not going to be a strategy you can do in Enigma, because any damage that you do to Enigma is going to pop the auras, right? And the defending player has to choose what auras go when damage goes through. So it's going to be interesting to see how Guardian, if any, and all the other classes play into the Ward Illusionist, which we're going to see very, very soon. But yeah, that is a pretty big turn for Andrew here. All he has to do now is pretty much just Rick roll his way to the end, but this is a perfect response from Rob here. A 0 for 4 snatch, but that is a chain starter in Dromai because you do have the Snapdragons available to you. So that is probably one of the best things you could probably draw at this point. A 0 for 4 with Go Again because of Snappies. That's inherently what's going to happen here, because Rob wants to attack with all those dragons to try and get back into the game and strip some cards away from Andrew to try and get back into this. So I think that's probably what's going to happen. But also that Snatch represents more than just damage and a chain ender at this point. It also represents a card as well, which can help Rob get back into this game, either from playing it and extending his turn even further, or setting up the arsenal for going into the next turn, the penultimate turn most likely. Andrew just needs to find a Dominate though, so he probably does have a little bit of room here where he can just take a lot of damage and then try and find the Dominate, but it all depends on what his hand composition is like at the moment, because if he can't throw a Dominate with his cards in hand at the moment, he's probably just better trying to conserve life, trying to set up a little bit. While he has a life lead here, he can probably try and throw some cards out, maybe try and pop some stuff here and there until he can find the Dominate line with Bravo's ability, or with another Tear Asunder. Oh, we can't because it's Blitz, we've already seen it. But he is deciding to conserve life here. He's throwing out his entire equipment suite in the front of this Snatch to block for 4. And as we expected, Snapdragons is coming out to give this Snatch Go Again. So it is a chain starter for all of the dragons that are now going to precede this. So yeah, and Azrael coming in for 1 arcane damage, first of all. And again, if Andrew doesn't block any arcane, those Null Rune Boots are pretty useless in this entire game. So we will soon find out whether those Null Rune Boots were worth having or not, because so far Andrew has not pitched anything to Arcane Barrier, and he's going to be taking that damage yet again from the Arcane from Asvalai. So still seeing another 2 physical come in here. So 2 physical. What is he going to do about that? We will see. But he does have an extensive life lead here, but he does still need to find a Dominate to try and get over the top of Rob. Rob's not going to be able to establish an arsenal here either. So again, I think it is just down to potentially Andrew finding that Dominate to close this out, because Dromai can operate very easily off of 1 card, as we can see here. The Snapdragons has had to be used this turn to crack back like this, but that is the power of what Dromai can do. I think Andrew probably just needs to conserve life at this point, unless he has a Dominate in hand. But he hasn't. He's taken all the damage. He's gone down to 6 life, and he's got 1 more block on the Skull Cap once he drops below lower life, and 1 more block on the Tectonic Plating. But he does have a 4-card hand to crack back with. Is it the Dominate that we need? Is it the Dominate that we need? But we need to activate Bravo first as well, right? So you activate Bravo, pitching a blue. You've got 1 left. If you've got another crippling, you can do that, right? If you got 3 blues, you can do a Bravo and a crippling. So is that what Andrew's got here? That might be what it needs to be. Because if he can't dominate anything, it's just a spinal. All right, okay. All right, okay. So did he not have the ability to do that, to do the crippling then? No, he had another red in hand by the looks of it. So the reds might have sort of clogged up his hand there, because he wouldn't have been able to throw the crippling by the looks of it. No, the spinal was the only option he's had here. Blue and 2 reds. And that's exactly what Rob's going to do now. He's just going to block with what he needs to and give himself more room. He's got 1 card in his hand, which he can either use to play out and maybe turn on all of his dragons if he's got Go Again on it, or he can just swing something, establish the arsenal, and then come back and do it all over again next turn. But he is gambling on the fact if Andrew can string together a dominate, and I think that's probably what Andrew is trying to look for here, is can I dominate something over the top? But the more room you give Dromai, the harder it's going to get for you, especially if that card that Rob has decided to hold back. He's just swinging with an Asvalai, again, 1 and 2. Is Andrew going to use any of that Null Rune? Probably not. It's tough, because if that card in Rob's hand now is a D-React, the Dominate plan goes out the window, because you have to then consider, is that a D-React in the arsenal? So it's going to be a tough one for Andrew to navigate now that it's dropped to this point. And that Spinal Crush turn not being dominated is probably what the stumbling point that Rob needed to get back into this game, and Rob really is piling on the pressure now. Establishing an arsenal as well, which could potentially be a D-React if we do try and see Andrew string together some dominates. But he's going to be pitching into the tectonic plating to establish a seismic surge, and then just coming in with Anathos. Maybe this should have been the turn that Andrew should have done last turn. Getting the seismic surge, establishing the crippling crush in the arsenal, perhaps for a dominated the turn after this, instead of just throwing out a spinal. But could be wrong. But I'm not a Bravo player at all whatsoever. But I think we do need to see a dominate here from Andrew. Otherwise, I think it's going to be all over. This is just a 6. Although he is telegraphing right now that there is a pummel available here, because he's got 2 floating. That's some of the mind games that Andrew might be playing with the opponent here. But Rob is blocking for 10, so he's covering that potential pummel as well with the 2 floating. So we'll see what Andrew has. He has a sigil. Okay, interesting. Goes back up to 6 then, as a result. No pummel on that one, at least. He has put a card into his arsenal. So he has set up a little bit here. But is it going to be enough? There's going to be cards demanded from Rob. Rob's going to be demanding some cards from Andrew this turn, especially with a Ravenous Rabble to start, revealing a Tome of Imperial Flame on top. Coming in for 4 vanilla damage. And again, this is probably one of the best things you could hope for, a 0 for 4 with Go Again that then turns on all of your dragons. Very, very efficient stuff at this point in the game. Andrew is blocking with a Sink Below, leaving him with 3 cards in hand. And I'm not sure whether he's going to sink. He is going to sink a card, to draw a card. But that is fully blocked on the Ravenous Rabble, and that's going to turn on all the dragons, of course. So Asvalai coming in now for 1 and 2. So again, will the Null Rune be used? Could the Null Rune have been just a block boots? Because if not, that is a potential wasted equipment slot there. But that's the thing with Bravo, isn't it? You got so many resources, it just feels bad to pitch a blue into stopping 1 arcane. So yeah, it's an interesting one, but I can appreciate why the Null Rune boots were chosen, because there is things like Asvalai in here. There are things like Burn Them All in here as well, and sometimes you can, if a Burn Them All is established and you got Asvalai and stuff as well, that blue pitch on the Arcane Barrier can carry over to give you extra Arcane Barrier or Arcane Protection as such, but we just haven't seen it in this game. He has taken the Arcane damage yet again here, and is still staring down 2 physical, which he is going to take 3 all now. It was 15-3 earlier, and now Rob is on the offensive with all of his dragons attacking. So we've got another 1 coming in here for an Ashwing. Andrew does, of course, still have the ability to pop cards. The only thing that's not unpoppable at the moment is Rob's Asvalai, which he keeps attacking with, because obviously the Passing Mirage. But then everything else after this is poppable. We can see Andrew now getting the value out of the Skull Cap after dropping to 2, and now he's coming in with another 1, which is going to be blocked by the Tectonic Plating, and then we've got another 1 coming in here, another Ashwing. Yeah, this is just not the position you want to be in as a Guardian that can block effectively, but not against all of these 1s. It's a lot of damage. Going down to 1 now. And another Ashwing coming in. He's going to sigil to gain 3 life, going back up to 4. That could also be pretty good, though. And now he's attacking with Uvia for another 1. And Andrew is going to take that as well. God, this is pretty mental stuff. It looked like the turn was over, and then Rob said, "Oh, I forgot. I've got a snatch in my arsenal I can play because you didn't pop any of my dragons." So Andrew now has to contend with a snatch as well, which is pretty nasty. That's on hit death. On hit death and replenish arsenal is not nice. So he's going to have to respect all of this and probably put 2 cards in front of it. But yeah, this is the sticky point now. Andrew is pretty much down to 2 cards that he has to keep in reserve every turn. He has to stop whatever the first thing is that's coming at him, plus the non-phantasm attack, which is coming at him, and then the phantasm attack. So he has to reserve like 2 or 3 cards each turn now to survive. So I'm not sure if that's going to be enough going forward here. I think Bravo's window has passed, but I could be wrong also. But look at that board state from Dromai is just terrifying, absolutely terrifying. And Andrew really in the tank here, deciding how he wants to block this 0 for 4. If it hits, die, draw a card. Tough times for Bravo in this particular game. Just goes back to that turn of, could he have conserved more life and then not through the spinal, which was just blocked? But then Rob would have been able to establish a load of dragons, and it could have been different. But yeah, it's hard to say. Regardless, we are going to see the Anathos coming in for 4, and that's probably going to go at Rob's face just to pull a card away. But yeah, it's tough because Dromai can just operate all of that stuff that she's established over the game. She can just operate on 1 card and then just throw all of that stuff your way. And appreciating the fact that all of that does have Phantasm, but it just doesn't stop the onslaught, unfortunately. But yeah, Rob is going to block 3 of that with that card there and take 1, go down to 2 each as Andrew draws back up to 4. And it is Rob on the play here. Just has to play a red card to swing of his entire team. Seems like an easy proposition from what we've seen so far. And okay, it's a Tome of Imperial Flame. That will do it. That'll pretty much do it. So draw 2 cards and then pitch 2 red cards, which give him some more ash. But more importantly, that is the nice altar there from Tobias, Sigilite Games, in Light and Strike. But that is pretty much the fuel for the fire now, that Tome of the Imperial Flame. Pitching a Light and Strike, and also needs to pitch another card, which is going to be a Rake the Embers. Going to go up to 3 ash here as a result. And he can swing with the entire team, and he does have 2 floating, which he uses to establish a Kyloria, which is a great little attacker, the little Snatch Dragon. And he's going to do exactly that. He's going to be attacking with Kyloria for 4 with Go Again. If it hits, die. If it hits, draw a card. This is pretty nasty. And obviously this doesn't have Phantasm because of the Passing Mirage. And that's covered up by a sink below. And he is going to choose to draw a card. Hiccups. Because I had some burgers earlier. Ate them too quickly. Now we're seeing a Invoke Yenderai come out. So Rob really just bringing the whole team to the table now. And attacking with 1 Aether Ashwing. But this is probably going to be a lot more Aether Ashwings unless Andrew decides to Phantasm this one. But I think the Phantasm defensive capabilities are pretty much out the water now. We are going to see a Cranial Crush destroy that Aether Ashwing and end Rob's turn. But it just begs the question as to what Andrew can swing back with here. He can probably throw Anathos and then establish an arsenal. That's pretty much about it. But there's not much else he can do. You could pitch into the tectonic plating, perhaps. Oh, yeah, that's probably what he's going to be doing here. Having the yellow in hand is pretty rough. It just means you can't... You can still swing Anathos, but you can't establish the arsenal, unfortunately. And and that's just going to be coming at Rob's face. And again, Rob can still afford at this point to block with 1 card and go to 1, which will allow him to just keep a 3-card hand and swing back with the whole team. So this is pretty painful for Andrew. Still threatening lethal, but it can just be blocked by 1 card, take 1, go to 1, and now have a 3-card hand plus the extreme board state that Rob has access to now. Looks like it's probably going to spell the end for Andrew very, very soon. The dominate, the crippling crush, dominate, big guardian attack dominated window has now fallen out of favour. And it looks like the dragons are going to eat Andrew alive at the very end here. We will see. Rob is thinking about his turn and what he can do. But first of all, obviously the first attack will not have phantasms. That's going to... Oh, and this is the perfect time to establish a Dromai underneath the dust caverns, because that's not going to have phantasm either. Plus the action point that you gain off the back. So this is pretty much game now, I think. Kyloria's swinging in for 4 with go again. If it hits, draw a card. If it hits, die. No phantasm because of the passing mirage. Then we're probably going to see, 2 cards as well. Yeah, that's pretty rough. Now we see the Dromai come in, which doesn't have phantasm because of the dust underneath it. So that's pretty nasty. And then obviously the dragon that comes in after the top of this will still have an action point left because of Dromai. So that is just protecting the phantasm yet again here. So that's not nice whatsoever. So now we're going to throw this Aether Ashwing, which will be popped by a choke slam. But then we've got no cards in hand for Andrew. He's going to be taking some damage from the Ashwings, and that is it. Just Guardian just missing the window there to close it out when it was 15-3. Couldn't find the dominate when we needed it, but congratulations to Rob on winning that game. And please make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tune in for more Blitz content in the casual league. You can join the Discord below if you want to get involved as well. Peace out. Cheers.